Let's learn some calculator tricks to make your life easier as you're doing math. So the first trick I'm going to show you is basically a way that you can plug in things into your calculator very easily. Find functions at values. For example, what if you had like a function, a complicated function, f of x. Let's say that's equal to, how about 2 sine x plus e to the x. Now, you could just type in 2 into your calculator, 2 times the sine of well, let's say we want to find f of 5 or something, right? You could do 2 times the sine of 5 plus e to the fifth. And this works great. You get an answer, right? That gives me 146.5-ish, right? But that's going to get complicated if then you need to find, what about f of 20? We got to replug it all in, and it's kind of nasty. So I don't like doing this because if you have to do multiple values for that function, well, you're going to have to just repeat a lot of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the graph. So I'm going to go to the graph here and, sorry, the y equals here, and I'm going to plug in my 2 sine of x plus e to the x. The nice thing about doing it this way is I only have to do it one time. I'm never going to have to type that again. So I hit my graph. Now at this point, I have a couple of choices. Now, one option is to just hit the trace button. So I just hit trace and then say 5. So when I hit trace 5, enter, well, I get that same 146.5. Great. Okay, how about 20? If I type in 20, oof, that's not going to work. So that's the downside of this, is that you have to actually see it on the graph. So I'm going to hit 2 and say go to. And the problem is that over here, I see only up to 10 on my graph. So to fix that, just hit the window and make sure that 20 is within your range. So I'm going to make my x max 25. So when I go in to the graph now, it's going to redraw it. And now I should be able to go to the 20. So once it's done graphing, you can tell from the little bar on the top right, hit trace and then 20. And there you go. We have it at 48. Whoa, that's a big number. I don't want to write it, right? Some nasty big number there. But we can now do it. Now, I do want to point out that there's another option on here. If you hit the second and then the trace button, the calculate, there's a value option, number 1. Why not just use that one? Now, I'm going to be honest here. I have no idea. I have never found a use for this on my calculator. If anybody knows the use for this, let me know, because I'm curious. But it really does the exact same thing as just hitting trace. So as far as I can tell, there's really no reason to do that. So never use value. It just has no value. Haha. All right, so that's one way we can do this. Now, you may have noticed a downside to this though, and this is why I actually probably don't do this that often. Sometimes I do it this way. But the problem is you have to wait for the graph, to go, right? And that takes time. So another method that you could do is if you go to second quit here, instead of plugging it into the y equals, I'm just going to type it here. So I'm going to say 2 sine of, and I'm going to use just x, plus e to the x, right? Same thing, I just didn't plug it into the y equals. Hit enter, and now it gave me 146. Wait, how did that happen? That happened because when I go to my graph, I changed x. If I were to trace at some other value, see x here? Now x is 5.63 just from moving around here, or maybe at 4.89 or whatever. When I quit out, x is still that value. If I hit enter, it's going to plug in that value. So now it's not the right answer. But what you can do is you can just plug in whatever you want for x. So say 5, store down here on the bottom next to the on button as x. So what this does is it makes x 5. And then you can hit the second enter button. That's going to be for the entry, and it pulls up the last thing you typed. Well, I don't care about that one, but if I do it again, second enter twice, now it pulls up that last thing. And this is, then I hit enter, now I get that 146. This is the method I usually use, because now if I want to plug in a different value, say 20, I just type in 20, store as x, enter, and then I'll do second enter twice, and then I'm back there. And I got my big old nasty number that I got before. This is the method I usually use. So there's one more method that I like to use, and that one uses the vars. So in this case, I'm again going to plug it into the y equals, which I've already done that. But instead of going to the trace, which, you have to wait for it to graph and you have to make sure your window's right. Instead, what you could do is go to the vars, and then go over to yvars to the right, function, and then y1. So what this is it's saying let's go to the y1, right? Whatever's in y equals y1, we can see that here. And then we can just do, just like function notation, y1 of, and then type in whatever number we want, say 5. So y1 of 5 is 146. And then if I did vars, yvars function y1 of 20, well, I can do that as well. So whatever you want to plug in, this is another good way to do it. I think my preferred preference is the second way. However, I will do all three of these combinations based on whatever I feel like or what is handy. Also notice it really doesn't matter what the function looks like. For example, if I hit my graph here, I don't actually have a clue what it looks like at 20. I can't see it, and that doesn't matter. So all three of these methods should work every time you want to plug in a value.